Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, everyone. So, I'm thinking to start this YouTube channel or this whole series on this YouTube channel in which I want to talk about obviously, I want to talk about history and politics of Muslims, political, discussion that affects the Muslims. And these are the things that matter to Muslim today a lot. If we look at the Muslim world, like it is in a political chaos, a big political chaos. Muslim leaders, like political leaders, are not working in the interest of the Muslims. Rather, they are working in the interest of those who wants to take, resources and wealth and other things from the Muslims. If there are also many religious, leaders who are also supporting these people as well. But however, I don't want to go a bit more details onto that thing right now. But I want to talk about the obligation that we all possess as a fellow Muslims, to help our other Muslims. Prophet ﷺ, this famous hadith most of us already know, he told us that those who work, he told us that the whole ummah is like a body, and if there's somebody who's been hurt, then everybody feels the pain, and we do feel the pain of Muslims around the world. As I said, there's not the Muslim world is in a political chaos. There is not even a single corner of the Muslim world where Muslims are not in pain, whether be it let's say Syria, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and many other places. Doesn't matter. Um, and that's the reason for which we do feel the pain, and that's the reason for which we want to work for the revival of the Muslims. We are 2 billion people, but when it comes to the international affairs, when it comes to international policy making, Muslims have no say. We are like kind of useless people. That's the reason for which I want to start this discussion about politics and history that affects Muslims in the modern times. I have chosen this book for the start, inshallah ta'ala. The book is the name of the book, as you can see, is Soft Power. And the reason for which I've chosen this book is because soft power is one of the powers that Muslims could easily have in the modern times. I would go into details in a bit of what exactly is soft power, but just want to let you know, guys, about this book in the first place. The book is written by a non-Muslim, as you can see, and the book is purely written from the perspective of an American, not a perspective of a Muslim. And the reason for and the problem with this one is that they don't have a stable or an objective moral basis upon which they consider things to be right and wrong. Basically, the author here is considering whatever is in the interest of United States, he considers this to be okay, and whatever is not, he's saying it's not. That's not how it works. In Islam, we do think in a different way. But inshallah, I'll come on to some other day on how do we think about this in Islam. Now, coming back to why have I chosen this book for the discussion today. If we look at the Muslims around the world, Muslims don't possess military power that works in the interest of the Muslims. The last state that worked, that had a military power, that had a military authority, that worked in the interest of the Muslim, basically that worked to protect the Muslims, that gave the security to Muslims, that helped Muslims through and improved their conditions, were the Ottomans. Ever since they were defeated in World War One, there has not been a single state, a single country that has worked in the interest of the Muslims. That's the reason for which I say that Muslims today don't possess any military power. I also said that Muslims today also don't possess any economic power. Like Muslims cannot put sanctions on others to do something that is against Islam or whatever. Muslims today, even as I said, the political leaders don't work in the interest of the Muslim. They work in their own personal, or their own political interest. So Muslims don't have a economic power either. But Muslims, what we can have if we work together, if we all work in a single direction, then we can have the soft power, and it is the third dimension of the power. Like we talked about military power that Muslims don't have, economic power Muslims don't have, but we can have soft power, even though we don't have as I said, a state that protects the Muslims. What is a soft power? Soft power is basically your ability to attract others to do what you want them to do through persuasion, through, as I said, attraction or seduction, rather than using a force or like economic sanctions or something. Rather than that, so let's say if I want you to do something, then instead of forcing you to do, what I would do is, I would maybe, attract you to do something, towards something, towards certain things, and you would yourself do that thing, even though I have not even told you, even though I have not even, forced you to do that. So that's what is called as soft power. How does it affect Muslims today? Well, it affects Muslims today in many ways. There are, let's say, many people who don't believe, who wants to leave Islam, even though there are people who are part of Islam who consider themselves as Muslims. But when it comes to their behavior and when it comes to their action, they, don't believe in Islamic things. This is one of the things that has been affecting Muslims, and it is, moving them away from Islamic values and Islamic like ideas, and this affects the behavior. The whole their behavior is affected. They start to think in a secular manner. They start to think in a non Islamic manner, and that's the reason for which we are divided, very very divided in the Muslim world today. How does soft power helps us? Well, Muslims, if we together did the dawah, if we become influential in a way in which our ideas, our concepts, our thoughts become so influential that it attracts others, it attracts like our Muslims to come back and feel that, okay, no, Islam is the best. In that case, you are enhancing your soft power onto others. So basically the soft power is basically our dawah that we have. When you have, when you do the dawah, you're actually, exercising your soft power. When it comes to dawah, what's important is that, the West or the enemies of Islam are also doing their own dawah of their deen, which is, liberalism and secularism and other things. How do they do the dawah? They do the dawah with their own soft power. They use, movies, they use Netflix series, they use advertisements, even the educational institute, they use media. They use, let's say, if somebody, students, when they go out and study into, foreign universities, when they come back to their home countries, they not only, take the education, but they also take their values. And that is what affects, people there as well, because those values are influencing others. The West and they exercise their soft power with all these things to change the behaviors of others. If you look at, the United States and what they have done throughout the last, let's say, a couple of decades, they have come to a realization that hard power doesn't work on Muslims. They invaded Iraq to change and make it a democracy. People still voted for Islamic Party. They invaded Afghanistan. Taliban came back. They have come to a realization that they cannot change Muslims through coercion. So how would they do it? They would do it through soft power or to co-option. How does it work? They try to normalize relations with Muslims, and when they do normalization, there is going to be business, there is going to be movies and other things that are going to be shared, and that is going to affect the behavior of the Muslims. That is going to change their concepts and ideas and thoughts, and that's how Muslims would go away from Islam. So rather than changing someone by force, you change them through attraction and seduction. That's what's called as soft power. As Muslims, the reason again for which I've taken this book is because this book is about the book shows a lot of faults and a lot of problems with the U.S. exercising their soft power. So when you are in the field of dawah, when you understand the tactics and the techniques of the enemy, you can align your own actions. You can align your own techniques or whatever in the way that benefits you the most. So the book is basically telling a lot of problems with the way in which America has been exercising its soft power, but the book has been written from a purely American perspective, and it's not again from an Islamic perspective, and that's the reason for which the book tells that, okay, these are the problems you America you have when it comes to soft power, and you need to increase onto that, you need to be better onto that. So that's what is, as I said, in general, that's what's called as soft power. Basically you show media and other things, and or you give your values to other and other things, and others would change their behavior in the way in which you want them to be, and that's how they would go away, or you would be able to get the outcomes that you want from them without even without even forcing them. So in this video, I'll just be going a little bit about what is a soft power, because I will just be talking from the preface of the book. Inshallah, in the coming videos, we would go into much details about understanding the soft power of the United States, and also how do we align our dawah and understand the political situation. Okay, so let's start. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. As I said earlier, soft power is your ability to get the outcomes that you want through attraction rather than coercion or payments. Coercion is basically the military action, and payment is your economic sanctions. It arises from the attractiveness of the country's culture, political ideas, and policies. If you watch, let's say, Hollywood movies and Netflix series and all these other things, they would show as if the Western world is like the best place to live. Everything's perfectly going, everything's fine. However, that's not the case. There are high, let's say, divorce rates. There is lots of poverty, people in depression and suicide, and lots of other problems. But when it comes to movies and media, it has been shown in a way in which it's the best place, and that's what affects the behavior of the Muslims or the people who consume those things, because they would think that okay, West is the best place to live. Like, we see all the problems here, but the West doesn't has those problems. When our policies are seen as legitimate in the eyes of others, our soft power is enhanced. They make people to feel as if their policies are legitimate to others, right? By the way, when I write like page 8, page 9, and other things here, what I mean is that this information is present on page 9 of the book, so you can go and check if you want to. So coming back, this person said that the real key is not how many enemies do I kill. The real key is how many allies do I grow. Because when you kill your enemy, whom are you going to rule? Israel can come and kill all the enemy, all the Palestinians. But then once the Palestinians are killed, let's say, they would go to Jannah, and there would be nobody to fight for. And basically, they would, like, there's the place is completely, let's say, Israel, and nobody is there to rule. The real key is how many allies do I grow. So when you grow ally, you can influence them as well, right? Some example of soft power you could see, there were some Chinese students, they were protesting in this place by creating a replica of Statue of Liberty, because people, like students, when they go out and study, they feel that the liberty and freedom and equality and all these other things, they are the best, and that's the reason for which their country or their home country is something that should be changed. And that's the reason for which, even though China is a communist state and they have lots of rules and lots of things against doing protests and other things, but even after that, you could see students were doing the protest. Another example is when Taliban were defeated in 2001, the Afghans were asking for a copy of Bill of Rights. Basically, they feel that the Bill of Rights was like the best thing to do, because they feel that okay, they were backward and they need it from others, right? The Iranians, the Iranian people from Iran, they go and watch, let's say, American videos and other things while sitting in their homes, through privacy, because they don't want to go let these things to go public. Why? Because these things, things like these are very seductive, very attractive to others, and people enjoy them, and that's the reason they don't realize the underlying problems with them, and that's the reason for which they would go and do those things. Seduction is always more effective than coercion. As I said, many values like democracy, human rights, and individual opportunities are deeply seductive. Many people, like even in the Muslim world, they talk about democracy. They want democracy. In a democratic system, you essentially remove the authority of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when it comes to legislation. You are saying that okay, a human being is a sovereign to himself, or a human being would make their own decisions. Inshallah, we would come some other day on to discussion on what's the problem with democracy. But even in general, you would find, if you go and look into on internet, you would find lots of problems with democratic system. Human rights and other things, okay, these are also deeply seductive, and that is what make people to buy those things, even though they don't realize the problems with them. Another example, you could say a flaw with the way in which how US has been using things. The war on terrorism did not actually remove terrorism. Like terrorism, even after 20 years of war, it's still there. But it rather brought about destruction, and showed what it actually did. So the way in which it helped the US was that it showed the military might of United States. So it strengthened, or kind of had an influence of the hard power. But you could see it did not remove terrorism, because terrorism is actually, or the people, the way in which they work, they have an ideology. You can go and invade a country and you can kill people, but you cannot but you cannot defeat an ideology. In order to defeat an ideology, you need to have better, stronger ideas. Islam is an ideology, and when people go and when they want to defeat Islam, they have to bring better ideas than Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala many times in the Quran, he says, if you have something better than this, then bring it. You would never be able to do it. That's what it means. Like, many people see it from the terms of literature, but this is also one of the ways to look at it. Allah says that if this Quran would have been from somebody other than Allah, then you would have found much contradiction. That's the reason for which it becomes hard for people to find contradiction in Islam. Rather, any other ideologies that are away from Islam, you would find much contradiction into them, right? So, war on terrorism, it actually did not help the United States. It was a big mistake that they had. Rather, it brought about destruction. On the other hand, it also affected the America's soft power, because after the war, many people lost their confidence. Many people, lost their trust in the American government. Like, there were countries like Spain and Italy that actually provided support for the war, but after the war, the popularity of America actually declined in those countries. And again, the same has been the case in the Muslim world. Even though Muslims did not provided the support for the war, but the popularity has been declining. This is a big problem for them, right? This Financial Times, they said that to win the peace, it's important to win the peace. Now, peace is not like, usually people think that, okay, peace is when both they agree not to fight. But peace is sometimes a win, because then you can exercise what you want to do. Then you have a time to implement your political agendas or whatever. So they said that to win the peace, therefore the US will have to show us much skill in exercising soft power as it has in using hard power to win the war. So if basically they want to say that, okay, you need to make use of soft power as much as you make use of hard power. So basically they're saying like it's like 50-50. That's how it works. And to some extent that's correct. If any nation, not just United States, if they want to be more powerful, if they want people to change their behavior and actions, they need to make use of soft as well as hard power. I've kept a hypothetical situation like Afghanistan. Like, if we know that US could not defeat the Taliban, but let's say if let's just take a hypothetical situation in which US instead spend more money into changing the hearts and minds of Afghan people, then they could have in a much different situation. I know the United States, they spend even more, like a lot of money to change by establishing, let's say, educational institute and other things, so that people, they can frame mindset of the people in which they want to do, in the way in which they want. But even after that, they were not successful. But let's just say that, okay, if the hearts of the Afghan people are changed, if the hearts of Taliban are changed, then in that case, US would actually have a victory instead of a defeat, right? But this is just a hypothetical situation. It's not true, right? Three dimensions of power, like I've already talked about this: military power, economic power, and the soft power, right? This book is actually, it reflects on the fraught international relations that arose before, during, and after Iraq war. So this actually takes the war on Iraq into consideration and goes from there. Now George W. Bush in 2003 here, he led the war on terror. Basically, hard power, invade and demolish your enemies and do whatever you want, basically. However, during 1991 Gulf War, his father was George H.W. Bush. He actually formed coalitions, and coalition was more powerful or more impactful than the actual attack, because through coalition you can get the outcomes you want rather than invasion. So here the author is saying that the United States was a mistake to go on war through without coalition, without the support of other countries. It was actually a problem. Now the consequences of this action was that it produced doubts about the legitimacy of the actions of United States, and there was anxieties about how United States would be using its power. Obviously, when you go in a war without consultation with others and without any like in a complete hard manner, then in that case people are going to ask the question about the legitimacy of your actions. Obviously, there was a sharp drop in the attractiveness of the United States around the world, and that made it difficult for them to get the support for the occupation and reconstruction of Iraq. Right? This is the reason for which many West countries in the West are trying to normalize their relation with the Muslim country rather than changing them by invading and establishing a secular country. This is the reason they want to enhance their soft power, and that's the reason for which they are doing this. This is a fact that the book gave. It says that the United States spends 4 times more on hard power than on soft power. The country that spends the most in military is United States in the whole world. It's even more than, I guess, first few after United States combined. It spends more than China and India and Russia as well. And the last point that the author wants to make is that the smart power is actually making use of both hard and soft. So a country should have hard as well as a soft power. Inshallah, we would go into discussion of why all these things are important. But yeah, inshallah, please subscribe if you have not, because I would be putting more such videos, and if you're interested into them, you might miss out if you don't subscribe. So yeah, let's meet next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.